Welcome to the Farming God's Way laboratory. It's really amazing to see how such a simple practice like Farming God's Way is so effective and yields such great results. By following the secrets that our Heavenly Father has revealed to us as closely as possible, we will obviously reap the rewards of His ways. The 6 technology keys are no plowing, 100% cover with God's blanket that is 2.5 centimeters thick, practicing biodiversity, feeding plants from the top, ensuring canopy cover and permanence. Understanding exactly why God's ways are so effective is what this session is all about, and is called 20 Reasons Why We Do the How. Let's take a look at an experiment to show the effects of God's blanket on runoff rates and erosion. Each of these runoff trays is at 15 degrees. The only difference between them is this is a normal plowed field surface, and this same soil, also plowed loose soil, is covered with God's blanket. We're also using exactly the same volumes of water in this experiment. You can clearly see from this experiment how the runoff on a typical plowed field is very high. And as the water gathers momentum down the slope, it erodes firstly the soil surface, and it eventually starts to form these rills, and ultimately even causes gullies to develop. Look at the amount of soil in the bottom of this glass. This is the folly of plowing. In the Farming God's Way trial, even though we used exactly the same plowed soil at the same slope, this one was covered with God's blanket. You can see that the runoff is significantly lower than in this example, and their soil erosion is absolutely minimal. This is God's way. Rainfall trials done at Sodara in South Africa, applying 68 millimeters on a 4% slope, showed that with conventional plowing, after 1 hour of rainfall, 90% of the applied rainfall was lost in runoff, along with 28.5 tons of soil in erosion per hectare, whereas the no plowing trial with 80% mulch cover lost only 6% of the rainfall in runoff, and a mere 1 ton of soil was lost per hectare. These are incredible facts. On their own, there should be enough evidence to convince farmers to turn to the way that God has shown us. What is the most limiting factor to yield in Africa? Rainfall. And yet we are rejecting the very gift that God has given us, losing 90% of the rainfall we receive. What is our most precious resource to hand down through future agricultural generations? Our soil. And yet we are rejecting God's gift to us. Conservative soil scientists suggest that an African average annual soil loss is around 55 tons per hectare per annum, but it has been proven to be as high as 250 tons of soil loss per hectare in some regions under conventional plowing. This is unfaithfulness with the talents that God has entrusted to us. We've got to turn to God's way. Reason number 3, improved infiltration rates. So why do we lose so much water through runoff when we plow? Raindrops fall at very high speed like little hammers hitting the surface of the bare ground. Their impact causes a layer of compaction, which we call a crust, just like that on a loaf of bread. Let's take a look at an example of this effect with a loaf of bread in experiment number 2. Pouring just 250 ml of water on the crusted loaf, we collect 200 ml of water. That is because the crust seals the bread and stops the water from penetrating deeper. This is exactly what happens when we plow. The first drops of rain create a crust, and this allows only 10% of the rainfall to go into the soil, and it is very wasteful. When we pour 250 ml of water on the uncrusted surface, we collect just 50 ml of water. God's blanket protects the soil from the hammer action of the raindrop by absorbing the impact like a shock absorber. When the raindrop's kinetic energy is dispersed, the water gradually moves down to the soil surface through the blanket, and because there is no crust, it is rapidly absorbed. Once the water reaches the unplowed soil, it rapidly infiltrates down the many insect, earthworm, and root channels, just like a sponge. In this way, we receive the gift of God, and little moisture is wasted. So the reasons why the Sedora experiment show that we have a 94% infiltration rate under farming God's way is because of the presence of God's blanket and the sponge-like soil condition through not plowing. Reason number 4, evaporative loss. After leaving these 2 trays of soil in the sun for 5 hours today, let's take a look to compare the evaporative loss. The 10% of the moisture that infiltrates plant soil gets exposed to very high surface temperatures as it is exposed to the sunlight, and this causes significant moisture losses through evaporation. I've measured soil temperatures over 65 degrees before, so you can imagine how much evaporation takes place under these extreme conditions of heat. With Farming God's Way, we are aiming for 100% continuous surface cover of God's blanket, which shades the soil surface and keeps the soil moist and cool. This significantly reduces evaporation from the soil and is a major benefit to Farming God's Way success stories under drought conditions. Cooler soil temperatures are better for seedling growth. Cooler soil temperatures can be a negative initially, as this causes slower germination and slower early growth when compared to plowed lands. But remember, the cropping cycle is 5 months long, not 2 weeks, so be committed to the long-term impacts. Once the seedlings are established and have pushed through the blanket, they seem to flourish and overtake neighboring fields within the first 3 weeks after emergence, as they have ideal temperatures for root establishment. Reason number 6, don't waste the first rains. Most farmers wait till the first rains before plowing. After their first plowing, they then have to wait again as the soil dries out so rapidly because of the poor infiltration and the evaporative losses. After receiving enough rain for planting, they then have to wait again for at least 2 or 4 days before they can get their workers or tractors into the field, as otherwise it just becomes a quagmire. This is an expensive and wasteful exercise. When we turn to Farming God's Way, we are able to prepare our fields for planting by digging our holes well before the first rains, so we don't waste any of God's precious gift. After the rains, we are able to get into the fields almost immediately with no negative effects because the soil is undisturbed, it holds its structure. So we save our first rain and are able to get into plant much sooner after sufficient rain has fallen. Reason number 7, improved weed control. Weeds are a major cause of crop losses as they compete with the crop for moisture, light, nutrients and space all the time. Plowing actually stimulates weed germination as it exposes weed seed to light and scratches the weed seed coat. We have seen this season how much 100% cover of God's blanket has suppressed weed growth in our Farming God's Way stands. The volunteers that kept on building up God's blanket on their stands only did 2 pre-canopy weedings and 1 post-harvest weeding. The weedings were light and very quick. Now, one of the volunteers was very busy over the season, so he couldn't give the management needed to his crop, and so he didn't put on enough blanket. As a result, the weeds in his field went crazy, and he really struggled to keep them in check. His crop yield suffered drastically because of the losses of moisture and nutrients stolen by the weeds. He had to do 3 weedings before canopy closure, all of which took more than double the time and were very hard work. So no plowing and 100% surface cover helped significantly in reducing weed growth. For the first 2 to 3 years, the benefits, especially of moisture conservation, are the major reasons for yield and economic improvements. But thereafter, there are significant benefits to Farming God's Way, determined by the changes occurring as the soil regains its original crumbly structure. Reason number 8, the improved water holding capacity. This crumbly structure greatly improves the soil's sponge effect, or the water holding capacity. In this experiment, I've taken 2 sponges exactly the same size. I'm going to chop one of them up to represent a plowed soil. This one is standard to represent an unplowed soil. Let's see how much the plowed soil sponge will hold. Just 175 mils. Whereas if we take the unplowed sponge into the water, let's see how much water that holds. Oh, we filled our beaker. Time to get a bigger one. Even that one's not big enough. It's amazing, 525 mils. When compared to the plowed 175 mils, that's almost 3 times the volume. This simply shows that soil with an unplowed sponge-like structure is far better at holding moisture, which in turn means better yields. The miraculous effects of God's blanket in preventing erosion have already been explained, but another factor is how plowed soil is far more susceptible to erosion than unplowed soil. Recently I had a laugh with a Ugandan man who said to me, "Now I understand why we have been growing rocks in our lands, because our soil has been washing away each year." The same sponges can show us that same fact very easily. We need our independent auditor, Sean Goodall. Would you please come and verify these experiments? Now, come a bit closer. A little bit closer. That's right. Okay. And now, for the unplowed soil. You can see no soil disturbance whatsoever. Reason number 9, improve fertility. When we burn God's blanket, we lose most of the precious nutrients found in crop residues into the atmosphere. When we plow them in, we also lose out because the bacteria break down the plant material and release the nutrients, but the organic matter gets oxidized so fast that it has no long-term benefit to soil fertility. Leading soil scientists say that in the early years of plowing, you halve your soil organic carbon levels each year you plow. So it takes you years literally to rebuild an impoverished soil. Whereas if we start to accumulate God's blanket, it gradually decomposes over the years by the breakdown of insects and other microbial activity. This is an important part of releasing the nutrients back into the soil again. God in His wisdom placed the mulch on top of the ground, where it gradually breaks down into dark-colored humus and then into soil organic matter. Soil organic matter is called black gold, as it is such a good indicator of soil fertility. Black gold can hold a lot of moisture as well as increase the cation exchange capacity of the soil considerably, so that the soil can retain nutrients and keep them in the root zone instead of them being lost through leaching. Reason number 10, nitrogen fixation. The soil fertility is also improved by rotating grain crops with legumes such as beans, soybeans, groundnuts and others, which fix nitrogen. This will be available for the following year's crop. The yield improvements after rotations are quite substantial and are a definite part of God's plan in reducing input requirements as the soil fertility improves with good management. Reason number 11, reduce compaction. Besides the negative effect of the crusting, as already explained, plowed exposed soil is also susceptible to slumping, which is the collapse of the whole profile over time as the structure and air spaces get pulverized, making the soil much more compacted. By practicing no plowing, it is interesting to hear of Farming God's Way farmers joyfully commenting that when they walk on their fields, the soil seems spongy to them. Let's go and collect some clods for our next experiment. Jay, I'm just going to nip into this field. This is a famous deep plower. I'm going to get a clod of soil from his land. Ah, look at these terrible clods. Take a few of these back to the lab. We've just nipped across the road, literally 200 meters from where we collected the last sample, and we're now at the Westgate Harare Farming God's Way station. We're going to collect a sample from the well-watered garden right here. Oh, look at the size of these cobs on this amazingly beautiful well-watered garden. Now, this well-watered garden hasn't been ploughed for the last 7 years. Let's take a soil sample from here and compare it to that ploughed field. Okay, we've got our clod from our ploughed soil, and we've got the clod from the unploughed soil. It's amazing to see the differences. What we're going to do now is place each of these clods inside the water. If we place the clod of soil from the ploughed land in the glass, we see an immediate collapse of the outer surface and a gradual collapse over time of the clod altogether. The unploughed clod from the well-watered garden, however, is very stable in water and does not collapse. It is being held together by roots, organic matter, insect glues, and fungal strands. This is what we call a water-stable aggregate, and clearly demonstrates how much more stable and resistant to erosion Farming God's Way soil is. Ploughing also causes plough pans, which are hard soil compaction layers, which form usually at 20 to 30 centimeters deep and are caused from regular ploughing and heavy equipment shear lines. They can be so hard that no roots can grow through them, limiting even 10-meter deep beautiful soil to a mere 30 centimeters deep over the years. And so they must be broken in order to get good yields. They can be broken using a ripper or a pick line, and the pan just needs to be shattered, not uplifted. Farming God's Way soil actually increases its volume over the years and has many old root channels and insect burrows which allow for next year's crop roots to move quickly down through the profile, unrestricted. Reason number 12, improved aeration. The sponge effect from not plowing through insect tunnels and decomposing root channels also plays an important role in keeping air locked in the channels, which will allow the roots to breathe even in waterlogged conditions. You can see in the plowed soil that there's no locked air bubbles in here, as nothing's coming up. Whereas if we come to Farming God's Way soil, watch carefully and you'll see the air bubbles coming as I tap this. Reason number 13, soil microbiology improvement. Soil is far more than just dust, and one of the most recent advancements in soil science has been understanding the benefits of God's creatures to the soil growing medium. Even when I was studying agriculture in 1990, the value of soil microbiology was not commonly understood or taught. There are two basic types of soil microbes: aerobic, which is those that need oxygen to breathe, and anaerobic, which is those that breathe carbon dioxide. Man, in his wisdom, inverts the soil through plowing and buries the aerobic organisms in the anaerobic environment and lifts the anaerobic organisms into the aerobic environment. Yes, you guessed it. They all die as a result, leaving the soil lifeless. God created each organism for a purpose, and man has upset that balance. A soil filled with life is a healthy soil. We must be faithful to care for God's garden and all the creatures in it, managing them in such a way that they will allow our soils to be fertile and produce good yields. By not burning the blanket, we create an ideal environment, cool and moist, for an abundance of organic life. By not plowing, we allow these organisms to serve us where insects and worms become our little plows, keeping our soils full of channels for good infiltration of water and allowing for good aeration. Others still fertilize for us by depositing the soil organic matter or black gold right into the root zone. Others break down the organic matter to make the nutrients more available for plant uptake. They are all a part of God's sovereign plan for our living in abundant life. Number 14, pest and disease control. Many farmers are fearful of pests and disease infestation when shifting to Farming God's Way because of all the microbial life, but quite the opposite has been proven to take place. Plants under moisture or nutrient stress actually give off wavelengths of light like an attractant, which encourages pests and disease. Our bodies are just the same. We are more susceptible to getting sick when we are under stress. So the first line of resistance against pests is a healthy plant that is not under stress. Secondly, the best long-term remedy against pests is actually other insect predators. And so a healthy, balanced soil ecosystem is the safest environment to prevent an infestation in the very first place. For example, root nematodes are problematical in the soil, but less than 30 of the 100 types eat roots. Plowing actually encourages the dominance of root nematodes, whereas no plowing controls root nematodes by making room for their many natural predators. Monocropping, or growing the same crops year after year after year, also encourages major pest and disease buildup. The practice of crop rotations, however, breaks the pest and disease life cycle and significantly reduces crop losses through their infestations. The economic benefits of Farming God's Way are as dramatic as the others, and on their own should suffice to cause a change from plowing and burning. Number 15, reduced field preparation cost and time. In mechanized commercial practice, farmers deep plow, inverting the soil. Thereafter, they harrow at least twice, but often 3 times, in order to break down the heavy clods they have created. All this before planting. It has been proven that commercial farmers spend 3 times as much on fuel, oil, tines, maintenance and repairs of machinery compared to a no plowing technique. 3 times! Imagine what that does to affect profitability. Small-scale farmers are spending up to 10 weeks plowing and preparing their holes, compared to just 6 weeks to complete holes ready for planting with Farming God's Way. Time is a resource not to be wasted. We need to appreciate it. Reason number 16, reduced fertilizer losses. Every year, millions of bags of fertilizer get lost into the catchments through runoff losses, leaching, and erosion. These annual losses account for billions of dollars wasted yearly. In the catchments, this wasted fertilizer causes environmental disasters in dams and rivers. Fertilizer is very expensive, so we should use it wisely, place it accurately, and preserve it in the root zone. Farming God's way accomplishes all of these objectives most efficiently. Number 17, improve drought tolerance and the risk spread. A soil's drought tolerance has been proven to depend on 3 factors. Firstly, the percentage cover of God's blanket, good aggregation or a crumbly soil structure, and the amount of living organisms found in the soil.
This year, we had a very terrible drought. We had no rains from the end December till the harvest time. But I thank God that through farming God's way, I managed to get 20 50 kg bags from 2/3 of my whole field. Well, unfortunately, my closest neighbor will never turn to farming God's way. He only get 1.5 bags from exactly the same land area.
One year of crop failure is a significant economic loss and may lead to a family dying of starvation. So take the necessary precautions as droughts and infrequent rains will come. Having your eggs in more than one basket is regarded as good economic sense. The practice of 1/3 rotation also helps to spread the risk of a total crop failure in a disaster such as drought or regional pest outbreak. Reason number 18, reduced irrigation costs. The numbers of times that a crop gets irrigated can be drastically reduced due to the moisture conservation from no plowing and having a high percentage of God's blanket. 100% cover would save 4 waterings as compared to no cover at all. Irrigation is very expensive to run, and so 4 waterings less could be the difference between a profit or a loss. Reason number 19, improve crop efficiency. The most important factor to consider is the crop itself. Crops grown in burnt and plowed fields struggle to find moisture and nutrients and are regularly under stress. This stress causes them to grow inefficiently by sending roots deep into the profile, and they spend too much energy on the below ground portion of their growth and not enough on the above ground portion. We don't harvest below the ground, but above. Farming God's way provides a plant with the ideal environment to flourish by limiting its stresses, and so the plant grows much more efficiently, and the result is greatly improved yields. The roots grow right underneath the blanket, accessing the high fertility of the decomposing blanket and enjoying the readily available moisture in the upper levels of the soil profile. Reason number 20, yield improvements. Take Dixon's increase from his father's average of 3 bags to his 5 to 45 to 54 to 69 bags, or Joseph's from 7 to 70 bag increase, or George's 9 times yield improvements. Well, they say seeing is believing, but before we end off the session, let's summarize the 20 benefits. Number 1, reduced runoff. Number 2, reduced erosion. Number 3, improved infiltration. Number 4, reduced evaporation. Number 5, cooler soil temperature, better for seedling growth. Number 6, you don't waste the first rain. Number 7, improved weed control. Number 8, improved water holding capacity. Number 9, improved soil fertility. Number 10, nitrogen fixation through rotation with legumes. Number 11, reduced compaction. Number 12, improved aeration. Number 13, soil microbiology improvement. Number 14, resistance to pests and disease. Number 15, reduced field preparation cost and time. Number 16, reduced fertilizer losses. Number 17, improved drought tolerance and the spreading of risk. Number 18, reduced irrigation costs. Number 19, improved crop efficiency. And number 20, yield improvements. Have a look at these two pictures taken in Uganda. They both had the same seed and were planted at the same time. Unbelievable differences. The one, conventional farming, and the other, farming God's way. This other picture of Duncan Jairus' field with his neighbor's conventional farm field in the foreground shows the dramatic benefits to turning to farming God's way. The Bible says, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear, and eyes to see, let him see." You are now without excuse.